live on DAZN Worldwide.
Saudi Arabia.
Saturday, May 3rd, 7 p.m. Eastern, Canelo versus Skull. The King stakes his legacy once more for the undisputed crowd. Standing in his way is Warrior Skull, undefeated and poised to decimate the division on a knockout weekend of boxing.
Let's make history.
Get Canelo vs. Skull, Saturday, May 3rd, 7 p.m. Eastern, live exclusively on DAZN. Buy now at DAZN.com.
The search for truth never ends. Introducing June's Journey, a hidden object mobile game with a captivating story. Connect with friends, explore the Roaring '20s, and enjoy thrilling activities and challenges while supporting environmental causes. After 7 years, the adventure continues with our immersive travels feature. Explore distant cultures and engage in exciting experiences. There's always something new to discover. Are you ready? Download June's Journey now on Android or iOS.
This is a More Than Just Podcast production.
Welcome to this podcast, Season 7, Episode 30. My name is Tim Mitra, and I am in Jacksontown, New Brunswick. Woo! And I'm joined in person, live, and on the mic with Jonathan Kuline, also in Jacksontown, New Brunswick.
Hello there, kids.
We have Jaime Lopez Jr. on the line in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
Did he say how's it going?
He did say how's it going.
All right. We also have technical difficulties.
I'm going to do an interpretive dance for Jaime's speech because we've got a complicated hookup here to record live. Got it.
Yeah, I don't think we have any fact check from last week, right?
No fact check.
No fact check. We were perfect.
Yep.
So we're just going to jump into the headlines, and Jonathan's up first.
Yeah, let's jump into the headlines. Okay, so we had talked a few weeks ago about the fact that they were fishing around for this new DC movie that they were going to make about Sergeant Rock, which was a popular in the past, but perhaps less popular now, military character. And it seemed kind of weird for the sort of remake of DC that they were going to have this movie. Well, apparently the powers that be agree with me because they have scrapped the idea. And the Sergeant Rock movie that was going to be directed by Luca Guadagnino, who as famously did the movie Challengers last year and Queer last year, is now kaput. They are not making it. So I don't feel bad about this because I really didn't know how this fit into the grand scheme of things. I wasn't looking forward to it. I'm not a huge fan of war movies, and I didn't understand why, of all the things that are in the DC arsenal when they're trying to reboot it, they were doing this. So I'm fine with it. Do either of you have any strong feelings?
Nope. Yeah, I think it's probably bad timing for this kind of media.
Yeah. It was a strange pull in the first place, and I think this is for the best. In other news, we lost a VFX icon this week. Bruce Logan died this week at the age of 78. It may not be a name you know as a household name for science fiction, but he was one of the VFX and cinematography gurus at Industrial Light and Magic, even before it was Industrial Light and Magic. He worked on 2001: A Space Odyssey. He worked on Star Wars, the original 1977 movie. He worked on Tron for Disney way back when. And yeah, he was a real, part of the firmament of creating visual effect way back when. And yeah, pretty amazing. 50-year career working. He also worked on movies like Batman Forever and Airplane. And apparently he was part of the unit that filmed the explosion of the original Death Star that you can't see anymore because it's gone now. But
well, you can watch it on the special DVD version that I have, right?
That's right. And I mean, I guess we're getting to that part of, post these movies that we're losing these kinds of people. But I just wanted to call attention to Mr. Logan's experience. And, again, these guys who were so unbelievably creative back in an era when the kind of stuff they were expected to do to make these visual effects impactful is, it's primordial compared to where we are now. These guys were literally building models and setting off firecrackers and, building these huge, scenes on the floor of you know,
warehousing in Van Nuys.
Exactly, to try and come up with these incredible scenes. And so I mean, again, much respect to Bruce and to all the people who brought us that incredible creativity.
So I started watching Light and Magic, which is a 2-season show on Disney Plus. I guess I must have missed it last year, but this particular person's name wasn't there, but I'm sure he's in the episode. The first episode is all about, Dennis Muren and, all those guys, and the guy with the Quaker beard. I can't remember his name. The guy who's in charge of the production.
Yeah.
All about them and how they where they came from and what they were doing. And it's really cool because they're all into Harryhausen.
Ray Harryhausen.
When they were kids, they were all made their own little animated movies and stuff like that. So
yeah.
The one guy George Lucas got the one guy to come on board and do the stuff. The lead guy, big mustache, that's all I can remember about him. And but they hired Douglas Trimble and
they hired them when they were like young, still in film school. Like most of them were like in their late teens and 20s,
graduated or whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, incredible. And these guys, again, not only did they do this stuff, but they continued working for years and years and years. These were pioneers.
Yeah, well, they became Industrial Light and Magic.
That's right.
So
right. Yeah.
It feels like we're getting to sort of that decade where no matter how long you live, eventually you got to go, and we're starting to see this whole era sort of happen, right, of people. So sad to see this person go, and I'm kind of thinking, like, who's next? Like, what else is going to happen?
Well, I mean, even if you just think about the people who are the front-facing people, the stars of the movies from then, not a lot of them left. It's starting to get up there. I mean, even George himself is an older man now. So, yeah, a sad reality. But, man, look at the legacy that people like Bruce left behind, right? All right, Jaime, you're up. What you got?
In this era of CGI that we were just talking about, how the old ways were good too, but maybe more limited. Well, there's an article here on Engadget on the movie coming up, The Legend of Ochi, which is cool because you're like, oh, okay, I see a little, monkey, kind of looks like Grogu or Gizmo, looks real cute, like it sells real well at Happy Meals and stuff, right? And all that you would think, oh, clearly they're going to do this as CGI. And to be really clear, there is some CGI, they say, for the Ochi characters, especially when they're running around or something. But they went with old school puppetry for the main Ochi character or creature. So this article talks about that it's got challenges, but it's got some interesting things about the medium, like you're using rods to move the puppet around, and given that it's a little baby creature, little baby creatures aren't exactly super smooth when they move anyways, right? They're kind of a little bit not fully sure of their muscles. So this seems really cool. It seems interesting. This is an A24 film coming soon. I don't think it has an exact date yet, but it looks cute. It looks interesting. It looks like it's done in that style of, like, you could totally see this being an 80s movie.
Yeah, it has a kind of a never-ending story, labyrinthy kind of vibe to it. I saw the trailer for it, and I was actually pretty blown away. But I recognized that it was probably at least a mix of CGI and puppetry. I didn't realize there was that much, but it does look really cool.
Yeah, and if that didn't sell you, it's got Willem Dafoe wearing armor in what is like in like a modern era. He's straight up wearing I don't know, family legacy armor or something. Not sure what's going on.
Is it dyed green, and is he cackling while he's wearing it?
People are definitely going to do the memes for sure.
Yeah.
Next is we talk about how wonderful a job Apple did with the marketing around Severance and just like the really bizarre, cool stuff, like, oh, look, they took over Grand Central Station and sort of just made the Severance stuff happen in a little glass box. They don't do that with everything, though. And so the title here is Apple TV Plus is, quote, worst marketer in the universe, says producer. And I'm going to say it was the producer of La Maison, which I have no flipping clue that was a thing that existed. And I have Apple TV Plus. I'm speaking to you all on this podcast where this is what we do. We pay more attention than the average person. No clue that this even existed. So I totally believe that we've talked about Apple making all of these banger after banger, and certainly things like Ted Lasso or Severance that really took off. Cool, but they really just need to step their game up. They're not used to crowing about this sort of stuff, and it's weird because they do it with the devices, which is mentioned here, right? Like they do really good for iPhones. They're not so good for the television side.
Yeah, it is a strange thing, especially because they do lure in a lot of very high profile creators, actors, and and they spread the love around. They spend a lot of dough on these shows. It is weird that the quality is so high and yet the imprint on society is so low, other than, as you say, a couple of those real bangers. Yeah, I mean, this guy probably has a point in his case. I wonder if that's true across the board, and I wonder if Severance is a reflection of that, and the studio has gotten a fair bit of attention too. So I wonder if maybe they're starting to see the light that they have to actually do something a little differently.
I guess it depends on the circles you run in, because both Carol and I knew this show was coming out.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it's a sort of a haute couture fashion show.
Yeah.
Where teams from New York and Paris switch places, which is why it's the Ted Lasso kind of idea. You got the wrong
fish out of water.
Fish out of water kind of idea.
Yeah.
And so we were aware of this show. Maybe, I don't know if I saw a commercial for it on Apple TV or something, but I did see a commercial because I remember asking Carol about it. She said, yeah, because she read about it in Vogue and a few other places like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is the target market for that kind of story.
Well, they are casting a wide net. From the people who brought you Severance, here's a show about fashion designers in Paris and New York. Yeah, it's a fair point. I mean, I think they do need to develop some consistency, because I think we agree that the quality of their shows is very high, and maybe they do need to shake it loose. I don't know. It feels like they've always been like on the precipice of like really breaking through and maybe starting to leap past some of these other services because the quality's so high. But yeah, maybe that's just a bubble that we live in.
The final thing rounding things out is the next weird evolution of MoviePass. For those of you who don't remember, MoviePass was at one point this heavily VC-funded, let's burn all the money, zero interest rate phenomenon thing of like, let's just pay a very small price and you get access to unlimited movies. It was a great thing for movie buffs. Not so good from a profitability and sustainability standpoint. So that expired, and it has come back in a newer form where it's like, hey, guess what? Blockchain. But ignore that for a moment, because that seems like a really weird thing. The blockchain NFTs is like, bro, this is not 2021. The more interesting part and really strange part is like, what if instead of just arguing with people on the interwebs about how much money this movie's going to make or that movie's going to make, and instead you could actually bet on it like it was, fantasy sports. Sports betting. I'm like, okay, do we need more things to bet on? Really? Like, I don't know that we need more of that, but this is the latest iteration of MoviePass.
This is for someone in a marketing meeting was like, hey, we have a whole untapped market of people who don't watch sports. What can we get them to gamble on?
Yeah,
and like, I want to get into porn, I guess, so they get into gambling.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it at all. Although I think maybe the three of us could be good at this.
Except the gambling part.
Yeah,
it's true.
That's the tricky part.
I think we just need to list odds on our site. Maybe we can get some kind of promotional deal. I predict the Thunderbolts will make $150 million.
Well, it's on the IMDb page. They do have a predicted amount that they're supposed to make this.
Well, yeah, because they actually do like tracking and stuff like that. Like the industry.
And I'm sure Vegas takes odds on that stuff.
Do you think so?
Oh yeah.
No, I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can bet on pretty much anything. But it just, what kind of degenerate do you have to be like, oh, I've got this money burning a hole in my pocket. I could put it down on a football game, but I'm going to bet on the box office return for Encanto 2.
Yeah.
So weird.
All right, well, that brings us to the main part of the show where we talk about usually something Star Trek related, but there is no Star Trek, so we'll talk about other things. This week we're going to talk about Andor. We're still going through season 3. Season 2. I've got 3 in my mind because of the number of episodes. So yeah, season 2, 3 episodes. The next next 3 episodes, 4, 5, and 6 drop. So we'll talk about those. We're also talking about The Last of Us season 2, episode 3, and we also have Doctor Who Season 2, Episode 3, The Well. And as a special surprise, last-minute edition, Jonathan and I just got back from watching a sneak preview of Thunderbolts Asterix. The Asterix is important, apparently. And we'll do a quick hot take, hopefully spoiler-free.
Yes.
For people.
We'll try and keep it above spoilers. There, we'll get into it when we get there.
Yeah, cool. All right, so on to Andor, Season 2, Episode 4, which is Ever Been to Gorman? I have friends everywhere. And visiting friends?
Everything sounds sketchy when you say it like an Imperial officer.
Yeah, that's true. Visiting friends. I forgot. There's four things they say, right?
Yeah.
And then we'll get into that in a minute. And then what a festive evening.
Yeah.
All right, so ever been to Gorman, John?
I haven't, although having grown up in a house of fashion, I feel like maybe I did a little bit. Lots of thread everywhere.
Oh, that's true. The silk thing, right?
Yeah. I feel like I can identify, but this was. So I guess we'll talk about them collectively and individually, but this sort of 3-part arc was very much more dealing. Well, so worth mentioning, it's 1 year later, so we've got the first group of 3 episodes, second, third, and fourth. So there's 4 weeks of 3 episodes apiece, and they're going to each take place in a different year.
Right.
So this is 1 year after everything we saw last week, and we have Cassian and Bix still. Bix is still messed up. Still messed up from Ferric, and she's still messed up from what she just saw last week, which was a year before for her, of losing Brasso and attempted rape, which we talked about was a pretty impactful scene especially for Star Wars. And then we also get, again, overlapping stories. We get this story that continues from the first 3 about Gorman, which was this planet that is supposed to be really cool. It's got, these spiders that weave webs, and it's this, thriving fashion hub. But we now know from the first 3 episodes that the Empire is planning on strip mining it, basically, and so they're trying to basically lure the locals into doing the wrong thing. And it's a pretty sort of cloak and daggery kind of episode with of all people, we get Cyril Karn as the super spy, Tinker Tailor soldier spy in this one. Jaime, did you buy Cyril as a spy?
I mean, he plays the role well enough for as Andor ends up describing, I forget in which exact episode, it might be the next one, where it's like, you aren't even aware of what you're really supposed to do, right? And so they're kind of naive, and I'm like, okay, he's good enough for them. He convinced, or maybe got some help convincing the Imperials, who do end up raiding his office, that like, bro, I didn't bug my own office, and so he's kind of interesting to see as like a patsy as well, right? Because Dedra has her own special thing that she and her boss and a few others are looped into, and they can't tell anyone. She can't tell her love Cyril here, and he thinks he is helping, and he is, just not in the way that he believes he is. There's a lot in here.
He sort of thinks of himself as getting back in the action, but Dedra and Partagaz are using him.
But I don't know that Dedra necessarily knew that initially. You guys have jumped ahead actually into episodes, but because it's just generally about this episode, I found it to be more of an exposition episode, like you said before. Yeah. In fact, I was a little confused because you see Cyril on the planet by himself, and I'm thinking like, okay, where's Dedra? What happened to that relationship?
Well, his mom gets on the line and they have that whole conversation where she's like, "Oh, you left your job, you blew the relationship." Yeah, so like they do kind of set it up, but then they know that they're being listened in on, and that's why he's playing along, right?
Yeah. Well, the opening scene where he's combing his hair and he looks out the window and you see the workmen on the fence there watching him. Yeah. So he knows he's baiting them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but and the sort of the Bix anxiety, and how Andor is trying to help her with it. That kind of seemed like a sort of a character building thing about Bix and about the relationship, I guess, right?
Yeah, and then also the fact that they're keeping secrets from each other, right?
Yeah,
he's not telling her everything, she's not telling him everything, and she's doing drugs behind your back.
Starts with the drops at the end. But the drops are... did she come to the drops, or she had been doing them all along kind of thing?
She had them hidden, so okay. I think the idea is that she was kind of self-medicating in a very serious way, which does continue.
Well, in this episode, Luthen sends Andor on a mission by himself, but we don't find out what that mission is until the second episode. Yeah. Right?
Mm-hmm. So the first episode, we also see the return of Saw Gerrera. True. Forrest Whitaker back, being absolutely crazy, and he is. He's just absolutely ruthless in the pursuit of his agenda. I must say, I really wish there was some way to tie it all together, because he's appeared in, like starting with Rogue One and then going backwards. He was in, Rebels and Clone Wars, and you add up all these different appearances, and you get this really interesting picture of a character, but it's kind of all over the place because it's never really been his story. Mm-hmm. And Forrest Whitaker's he is going for it in that role. Like, he is playing menacing and crazy. So we get to see him torture this poor guy who's trying to teach them
Mr.
Willman, who is trying to teach them how to steal rhydonium, which is, I guess, fuel.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty menacing portrayal of Saw at this point. He has, the whole thing where he's like, smell the evil chemicals that'll scorch your insides. I love the smell of napalm in the morning. It was very weird.
But again, like how they break it down in episodes is that Willman thinks he's here to show one guy how to do it and then leave. And Saul is like, no, you're not going to leave until I get what I want.
Yeah.
And that's where that ends in this episode. And we find out in the next one how far he'll go with that, right?
Well, and we definitely, one of the things that they've reinforced through this is just, and they did it in the first 3 episodes we saw last week, just how scattered and disjointed, and not only disjointed, but like almost adversarial some of these rebel groups can be. Last week we saw Cassian steals the ship. He lands on Yavin 4, and these guys are willing to kill him and other people to, carve out their little corner of this thing too, which is a mess. Yeah. So I'm thinking we're sort of building towards a more cohesive rebellion, because obviously by the time we get to closer to the Battle of Yavin, we start to see the rebel units all starting to coalesce, right? The other thing we see is Mon Mothma, who is this one rang particularly true, but Mon Mothma trying to rally support for a bill to basically like help protect the Gormans and to try and keep power out of the hands of the ISB, which is essentially the Gestapo for the Imperials, and just getting shot down. She can't do it. Nobody wants to go against the Emperor. So we're also, not only are we seeing that, but this is also foreshadowing him in the beginning of New Hope, shuttering the Senate completely and saying like, no, we're done here. Like, I'm not going to pretend that I'm not in charge.
Right. Yeah, and we see the beginnings of the Gorman underground.
Yeah.
Who are kind of organized, like they're organized in a sense, but they're not. And I think they're meant to be the next level of incompetence beyond the guys we saw in the second episode, I guess, for the guerrilla guys, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it's the idea that, we heard from Dedra and Partagaz in the first 3 episodes that they were going to try and, she says, you're going to need some rebels who are going to do the wrong, can be counted on to do the wrong thing, right? And they're baiting them into doing the wrong thing.
And Cyril's there to sort of be the patsy for them.
Yeah.
And knowing patsy.
Yeah. What of all this stood out for you, Jaime? The first episode, Tim's right, it's a little exposition-y, but there was lots of seeds planted as these 3 episode arcs go.
Yeah, since this is, watching it back to back to back is kind of like watching a big movie. I'm maybe skipping a little bit further ahead. It becomes more obvious, but I find it interesting that, we know that the Empire visually, they're coded as Nazis, World War II era, but then they speak with a British and more specifically English accents.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're like space British, right? Space Nazis.
Space colonists.
Yeah. But in this case, Gorman and its resistance folks, they're basically space French. Like their whole language and vibe and fashion and all that. I'm like, this is coded as French.
Well, I asked Jonathan earlier if they were speaking German.
Yeah, it sounded like a mix of French and Yiddish to me.
Yeah, some folks say Dutch as well. So, kind of that region, that mixing pot region. Yeah.
Yep.
But my favorite thing, reading subtitles.
Yeah. Yep. I just like the idea that someone had to like sit down and like write a language for these people, which is like the nerdiest of nerddoms.
Right? And gestures, right? They have a, I assume some sort of, flipping people off gesture sort of thing they do where they raise their arm and then like sort of slap it in the middle. And then they also have gestures to be, saying hello and goodbye that are a little bit different and unique.
And they clap by tapping their chest.
By tapping their chest, that's right.
Mm-hmm,
I did, when they were doing the thing where they clapped their arm, I immediately went to Mel Brooks's Spaceballs. Hail, President Screw! So by the time we get to the second one, we get more of the Luthen stuff, too, because that's where we find out that Clea finds out that Skulden has the bug, finds out that Skulden is going to find a bug in his stuff. And so then it becomes a whole, is this where Luthen gets exposed? Is he going to get caught? Is Clea going to take a fall? So there's some good intrigue there. And actually, I really like the dynamic between the two of them. I almost have a little regret that we haven't spent more time with the two of them. We've gotten, I guess, a little bit more of him, Luthen, but when the two of them are together, their chemistry, where like, because he's such a commanding presence, he's so, playing the foppish fool when he's doing his, undercover stuff as, the pretending to be the art dealer, where he's, actually Axis, doing all this stuff. But she calls him on everything. She pushes him on things. She, she's his equal. And it's really interesting because I think in the first season, I read it more as, he's in charge. She's, second in command or whatever. But it felt like they were very much more on even footing. She was really putting her foot down on stuff in this episode. Yeah,
definitely. Well, she's sort of she's the right-hand man, I guess, in terms of like, she's
the one doing the hard work, right?
Yeah.
She's not even, not even just the right hand. She's the one who's actually like, mucking out the gutters while he's, attending lavish parties.
But like you said, calling him on his BS and stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And questioning his decisions.
And then we also get the start of the Cassian going to Gorman undercover stuff. We get, which was delightful. I mean, he's so funny when he's all dressed up and wearing the fineries and, sitting there drinking fancy drinks and stuff like that. I thought there was a really interesting echo between him in that role undercover and Luthen's undercover role as theoretically himself, right? That sort of like, don't be afraid to attract attention to deflect attention kind of vibe to it. I thought that was really interesting, that because we've seen there is kind of a mentorship relationship between Luthen and Andor, right? So I thought that was really interesting. They kind of had this parallel experience too when he's undercover. And then we also get more of like Cyril goes back to Coruscant for a debriefing. The debriefing happening in Dedra's apartment. Turn off the lights, which was a pretty funny scene. And then
they only had an hour.
Turn off the lights. And and then we also got Saw, right? So we got back to Saw, and the whole storyline of Willman trying to teach this guy on Saw's crew how to use this very, very delicate tool that, if it's used wrong, could absolutely French fry everybody. And in the end, Saw, the guy basically is pushing for like, oh, where are we going to go? What are we going to do? And Saw figures that this guy is a traitor and has him killed, and then basically says, you're with us now, to Willman. So interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how that story with Saw continues to play out. I'm hoping we'll see him more over the last 6 episodes of the series. I thought that was really good. Any of this episode really jump out at you, Jaime? I thought the 1 hour interlude scene was a real moment.
Yeah, I did think it was. I did think it was interesting that you get to see just how much Cassian has grown here, right? Like obviously we're like skipping a whole lot as they go, year by year. And they show the BBY, the years before Battle of Yavin that happens in A New Hope. But just remember what he was like before in the first season, especially early on, was pretty raw, right? He doesn't really know what's going on. And here in this season, and certainly by this second year of the 4-year cycle, he's like pretty sharp. He's like, hey, you need to have your guys not follow me because they're drawing more attention, trying to keep an eye on me.
Yeah.
You all are eager, but you really can't. Like, I understand your plan here, but it's just not great. You're going to like steal the thing and stay in the same place. Like you normally steal and then get away with something. You don't hang around there. I thought that was kind of neat to see.
And good foreshadowing as well for what plays out in the third episode, which is sort of the culmination of a lot of these stories, when he's sort of saying like, this has the potential to go really badly. And then it starts to go really badly by the time we get to the third episode. Yeah. It was definitely, again, more of the comedy of rebellion errors, right?
And we see that we get that the thing that I thought was kind of cool was the, visiting friends. Why do you ask?
Yeah.
I have, I'm just curious that way. I have friends everywhere. And that's how they know they're in.
Yeah. That's
their nose flick,
Yeah. Third episode, what a festive evening. So we see the Luthen trying to kind of divide Andor and Bix, because he comes by and he talks to her and he is going to give her a mission.
That's in episode 2 though, right?
Was that 2?
Yeah.
I thought it was 3.
He comes while
oh yeah, he goes and sees her in 2. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he finds the drops and realizes she's not together. Because in the third episode, Andor's yelling at him about visiting Bix.
That's right. And then the third one is also where Cassian comes back from Gorman and she's cleaned up the house and she's kind of got herself back in what seems to be better shape. And we start to understand why, as the episode plays out, why she decided to get herself in the straight and narrow, because of the missions that she was offered and what she really wants
to do. Yeah.
Well, because she needs to be cleaned up to do that mission, which she wants more than anything, right? And that's going after Gorst, the guy who tortured her on Ferris.
Yeah.
So she was like, "Yeah, well,
that was a happy ending." Yeah.
Yeah. And then we get. So I guess it was episode 2 of this 3 episodes. We also got Vel and Cinta back together,
right?
Which was a nice kind of continuation from series 1, as well as tying back into that first 3 episode arc where they saw each other but they weren't able to connect. And you're like, well, are they like, Vel clearly still loves Cinta, but does Cinta still have those feelings for her? And Cinta is clearly like moving on to different levels of the rebellion because she's clearly an assassin now. She killed Tay, and
she's also Doctor's assistant.
Well, yeah. She's also a nurse in a different show. But yeah, that was kind of sweet that they finally sort of get them back together, and then they realize, like, actually, you know what, we are the parallel to Bix and Cassian. We are in love. We should be together. We should be doing this stuff. Which, man, if that like. Never say, like, we're going to do it together from now on in the Star Wars thing. You're going to die. So, of course, as this the heist plays out, obviously this very well engineered by the ISB and by Cyril and Dedra and Partagast, it plays out exactly like they expected, except that there's an accident. One of the idiot locals comes by and causes an accident, which ends up killing Cinta, and that sets Vel off. And it's a real cluster bomb.
And the same way that Andor was giving them grief about, don't play fast and loose with the rules. Val at the end of it says, don't cry, stop crying.
Yeah.
Like
you're going to live with this.
Crying.
Yeah. Like, this is what the rebellion is.
Yeah.
Like, you thought you knew what a rebellion was. Now you understand what the rebellion is. You're going to live with this death that you caused.
Yeah.
Pretty intense stuff. Again, not as harrowing as the third episode, but still pretty dark stuff. And we also get the whole merging of the Luthen and Clea storyline with the Mon Mothma storyline, where they all come together at this party. We get Krennic back.
Right,
yeah, which I thought the having all of those players in the room, and we also get what was the guy's name? Lonnie. We get Lonnie, the Imperial officer, who's the source for Luthen there in the room. So like all these potential like flags and fires going off at the same time of like this person doesn't know this and this person doesn't know that. And Ben Mendelsohn as Krennic is just he's so wickedly despicable. Like he's baiting Mon Mothma. They're having an exchange about like, you know, his ideals are like, well, sometimes you have to break a few eggs to make an omelet. And she's like, massacre?
Massacre some eggs, yeah.
Yeah, so...
It's like, was it really that bad? Or did they just kind of die of their own incompetence? Nobody ever wants to, you know, rally around incompetence. It was the heroic, you know, fight against all odds.
I almost feel like he was doing his riff on Ben Kenobi's from a certain point of view. You know, from a certain point of view, they fell into the laser fire, you know? And we get the story in there. We should mention the whole sort of thing that has really irked these poor Gormans is they're building this. We know it's an armory. They know it's an armory. The ISB is saying, no, it's a you know,
silk factory,
health and wellness center. And we find out that it is going to cast a shadow over this memorial where Grand Moff Tarkin landed on 500 people. Like, what? That is some dark stuff. So yeah, again, like really, like this series continues to go to these places where like they are painting a picture of why a rebellion was needed, why the Emperor had to be overthrown, why the Imperials had to go. You know, it's going to some pretty dark places. You know, deporting them, putting them in foreign jails, bad stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they had that long drawn out section in the. Well, there was one thing. It's kind of a seed they planted in episode 1 that they discover that one of the artifacts that Luthen sold them is a forgery, and even more so, it's got a listening device.
It was a different piece,
right? But there's a listening device, and if they're going to start looking at all the pieces, they might. So Clea has to go, and she ropes the informant guy to help her. Meanwhile,
poor Lonnie,
it's right in front of Krennic and Mon Mothma. You know, trying to, and of course you can't get. There's always one screw you can't get undone, right?
Yeah, I thought the scene where like she's literally got like blood pouring down her hand was particularly. And her hand's
fine at the end,
she somehow managed to make it out okay. But the facial acting by the guy who played Lonnie, the Imperial officer, who she's using him as a human shield. That guy's so terrific. Like he looks like he's gonna crap his fancy Imperial pants all the time.
Well, he gets that a special assignment, and he sort of says to the other guy who says with pleasure, and his boss dude says, you know, why would you say that, right?
Yeah.
And then he just sort of says, you're gonna, and Lonnie says, you're gonna take the lead on this. Like he doesn't even want to be the boss man.
No, and it's really, we saw some of that angst between him and Luthen in the first season, and that's to whom he gets that great speech, the Stellan Skarsgård's speech in the first season, where he does the whole, you know, what is it costing me to do this? It's make my mind a sunless place. Like that whole speech was incredible, and you know, but now we're seeing it through Lonnie's eyes of like he's got a wife. We established it in the first season. He's got a kid. And he is deep in this stuff now, and he's in the big meetings, and he's starting to get more into more dangerous places. And you know, interesting is I think it was the first episode of these 3 episodes where he and Luthen meet, and Luthen is basically like, "Hey, how come you're not giving us more information?" And he's like, "Every single time I come here, I'm risking my life. Like there was nothing to say. I'm not showing up to not tell you anything." Like.
Well, and he says it to Andor at the beginning of this episode because Andor shows up at his shop and he's like, "What the hell are you doing here?
You came here to do this." Yeah. I mean, the third episode was definitely, obviously, as they all are, is the banger. What did you love about this one?
I think that everything came sort of together in terms of everybody using everybody. So, we talked about Saul Guerra using that boy to train the guy. It's like, oh, wait, the guy is a traitor. Okay, we're going to use the boy. You've got all sorts of layers of Luthen. Luthen seemingly, trying to keep all of his options in play with Bix and Andor. I think, realizes the only way to keep them both in the game is I got to get Bix healthier. So I'm going to send them on this mission to kill Gorst together as this weird cathartic moment for them. And I think he's totally willing for them to sacrifice, because he talks about, the topic with Andor. Andor's like, these guys are not ready. They're going to burn. He's like, well, they'll burn brightly. This is a huge propaganda play for us. Even if all these people die, it's like not great, but also kind of good too, because it brings the horrors of the Empire much more to people's minds, instead of, oh, something weird happened in some far off place that nobody cares about. It's like, this is a cultural capital. And then you've got, we already talked about like the multiple layers of, Krennic needs his stuff for the Death Star, but they're going to hide it behind a, power generation story. And Dedra and her boss are like, okay, we got to use other people. Like, we got to use these locals to be stupid rebel yokels so that we can give us an excuse to crack down on the place that we're going to use to mine this stuff. They're using Cyril to help with that, even though he thinks he's participating at a higher level, getting back in the game. Cyril is like lying to his mom, where she's like, hey, how come you're not with this lady who's going to spend her life? He's like, he actually is. Like, there's just so many different layers of people using each other that all kind of come together here.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I didn't even get to Mon Mothma and Luthen, that whole other piece. It's like this tangled web, no pun intended.
Yeah, really. It was also notable, I think, we talked about the Saw Gerrera, the ruthlessness we see there in the second episode, but it definitely is a really good juxtaposition in the third one, where, the heists, the two heists, right? Like, Saw is like, no attachments, no mercy, get it done, get the mission accomplished kind of attitude, versus exactly what Andor was talking about in saying, like, you're supposed to do the heist and get the heck out of there. When we see Saw, he's like, yep, pack up. We're never coming back to this place again. We're going to go here. We're going to steal this thing while the Empire is over there looking for something else. And as soon as we're done this, we're out of here. Like, he understands the game, but he's playing it on a really ruthless edge that isn't for everybody. Meanwhile, we see the sort of incompetence of the new cell of the Rebel Alliance in Gorman, who are, doing it all wrong, and it goes badly, and it ends up with somebody getting killed, and chances are they're going to get spanked in the next 3 episodes, right? It'd be interesting to see, as we talked about, they're doing year by year. So it was BBY 4 and then BBY 3. Next week will probably be 2. It'll be interesting to fast forward a year ahead on this, because, we kind of do leave Gorman in an interesting place. It'll be weird to jump ahead a year from, like, they had this big heist. This was the first sort of militaristic action by this rebel cell. What are the consequences? Are we going to jump back in next week with, and they're already strip mining? Or are we going to jump back in with, oh, but, Gorman is blazing brightly, right? Continues to be really great television. It looks great. And I didn't find these episodes looked quite as spectacular as the first 3. But maybe that was just because, you can't spend all the budget everywhere. But the spycraft, as you say, Jaime's point is perfect, is the layers of duplicity upon screwing people over was delicious this week. Absolutely delicious.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, the last first 3 episodes had like vistas, and these ones were more indoor, or you didn't get very many things, but there were some interesting camera angles, like, for instance, the scene where Val and the other insurgent do the exchange with the friends everywhere. And if you watch her, she walks like the plaza she walks into is symmetrical, and there's groups of people, and there's like a design on the thing. She walks directly down the middle of it, right as she's walking away, right?
Yeah, the overhead shots are really cool.
Yeah, they have that. And then, because somebody had sort of said they're not using the volume in this show.
No, they built all these sets.
No, I know, but the scene where, the first scene where Luthen picks up Andor, and they're in hyperspace, and that could have been done with a large LCD screen kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Because even the way Luthen's lit, he's in the front room, and he's in the cabin of the ship, and he's lit blue, and then Andor's in the back, right?
Yeah. No, it's It's super high level.
Still pretty, and they were pretty well dressed in that.
The costumes on Gorman were really impressive.
Well, Gorman, but also the costume that Mon Mothma's wearing, and
yeah, you're right. The one that
and the sort of little Cadillac sky car that she and her husband are in, right?
Yeah, that's some pretty bougie stuff.
So is his like I kind of wondered about this because I went back and watched parts of the third episode today, but is his role to support her as a senator, or does he have his own business, the husband?
I think he's a socialite. I think that's what he does. I think he like organizes parties and like glad hands and like.
But he talked about not having some big fancy thing that she should have had as a senator, kind of thing, right?
Well, and he mentions in the first season, he basically sort of says like, "I'm just window dressing for you," and I think that's part of the friction, especially in the first season. The friction between the two of them is that he feels that she has passed him because she clearly has, right? Yeah. And he chafes it against that. And there is this sort of unified, like, oh, your job's more important than me. Your job's more important than, and he doesn't even know the half of it, right? Because he thinks it's all about her job in the Senate when really it's way bigger. Yeah. But yeah, again, lots, like so many little subtle things that they carry forward through this whole arc. I think this is going to be a real treat to sit down and do as a big watch of the whole 2 seasons at some point, because there just is so many layers to it. Mm-hmm. We also didn't talk about the recasting of of Jimmy Smits for what's his name, Benjamin Bratt.
As a Gail Organa.
Jaime, did you feel personally offended? This felt like they were saying all Latino men look the same or something.
He was like on that space Ozempic or something. He loses a little weight.
Ozempic, nothing. He's got to be like 10 years younger. It was, I read an article this week because they were saying like, oh, it's so weird because, Jimmy Smits has been very good about coming back. He came back for Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's been very good at continuing to play that part outside of the movies. And they said it was not a circumstance where he didn't want it. It was that he was in the middle of another project and they knew it was just going to be a cameo and he couldn't make it work. And they were like, we're going to get somebody else to just do the cameo and you're just going to have to live with it. It is a little weird just because he has been so consistent, but also, I think what was his screen time? Like 40 seconds top, 35 seconds. Like, I think it's fine.
Now, a word from our sponsor.
Live on DAZN Worldwide.
Saudi Arabia.
Saturday, May 3rd, 7 p.m. Eastern. Canelo versus Skull. The King stakes his legacy once more for the undisputed crowd. Standing in his way is Warrior Skull, undefeated and poised to decimate the division. On a knockout weekend of boxing.
Let's make history.
Get Canelo vs. Skull, Saturday, May 3rd, 7 p.m. Eastern, live exclusively on DAZN. Buy now at DAZN.com.
With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Seeking the truth never gets old. Introducing June's Journey, the free-to-play mobile game that will immerse you in a thrilling murder mystery. Join June Parker as she uncovers hidden objects and clues to solve her sister's death in a beautifully illustrated world set in the Roaring '20s. With new chapters added every week, the excitement never ends. Download June's Journey now on your Android or iOS device or play on PC through Facebook Games.
Now, back to the show.
All right. You want to jump over to Last of Us?
Can't hear him, by the way.
Jaime's done talking. You can go now. The Last of Us. This is the Fallout episode, right?
Yeah, that's sort of the next. Yeah, after we lose the character we lose in the second episode, and Ellie and her girlfriend have to go off and sort of girlfriend. I don't know. Have to go off and she plays the political card first. She tries to organize and play along by having the what do you call it, the council meeting and present herself, and she takes time to write out her words because she doesn't tend to speak she speaks from her heart a lot, wears her heart on her sleeve and gets her into trouble. But in the end of it, she ends up, leaving anyway because the council downvotes the going to rescue or going to take care of or have exact revenge on the Firefly wannabes from Seattle, right?
Yeah. There was that was a really good scene. We got a couple of really nice scenes. Bella Ramsey, their performance has been really interesting because obviously we saw, like really emotional, angsty tragedy. Here we see the continuance of that in a flashback, and then we flash forward a few months later. She has that scene with Catherine O'Hara where she's putting on pretending to be fine so that she can get what she wants. Very manipulative, which is something we've seen from that character before. And then we also see her, she has that interaction with Jesse, and he's like, if you go in there angry, you're going to do it wrong. I thought that speech, like the way that she performed it as, slightly rehearsed, slightly stilted, I thought that was really quite well done. And then combined with just a really nice piece of writing. Obviously we knew that wasn't going to play. She wasn't going to get what she wanted because it's no fun to have 16 people go on a mission. But it was still interesting to see her try and take the tactical approach as opposed to the guns ablazing. And then she goes back to the house and grabs her hand cannon and decides to take matter into her own hands. But
the vote against her was so high. I was surprised there was that many no's. Yeah,
8-3. It was the final score there. So yeah, it was pretty resounding. And then they're off to. She and Dina are off to Seattle. Jaime, have you ever seen Seattle in such a state?
Yeah, my significant other and I were kind of wondering, like, okay, where's that guy probably looking out from? Which part of the bay is he looking over from his little watchtower? So that was kind of interesting. We're like, all right, let's find the Space Needle. Yep, there it is, right there. You can see it. And we also noticed, and this is like real inside stuff. So in this timeline, right, the Space Needle hasn't been renovated, so it's still this like bird cage nest of wires instead of now the real Space Needle without any cordyceps influence over the past 25 years is actually like an all glass enclosure. So it's less feels like it's preventing people from jumping out, which was a concern before. Now it's like, well, you can't because it's all glass, and you can also walk out. I've not done this yet, but you can walk out and look straight down on certain pieces of the glass, like other places have done.
In Tower,
yeah. They just copied Toronto. They just yeah.
Not that we didn't copy them.
That's a good detail though, Jaime, that they kept it in the time appropriate state. They didn't.
Oh, is this back in the past?
Well, because basically the cordyceps pandemic would have happened in frozen times from there on, right? So things that we are used to, like the completion of the new building here and the bridge there and all that, just wouldn't have happened, right? So yeah, that's a good attention to detail, and I would have never spotted that. It's a really good call. So we also get a couple of weird little sort of teasery things for we get the weird cults with the cuts on their faces.
Yeah, what is that about?
They clearly have their own, like they've. I looked up the article. It says they were called the Seraphites, and we don't really have an understanding of what it is they're afraid of, and we kind of get a vibe for the. They have their own way of doing things. This is a post-apocalyptic cult. They follow the teachings of someone, but it was interesting to see that, and then of course that plays out over the course of the episode. We then have Dina and Ellie run into them, and they're butchered.
They've been dispatched, yeah.
And the only clue that we have in there is that the leader of the Seraphites basically says wolves, right? And so are we supposed to take that is the same, the WLF, the wolves on their shoulders. So not only are these people, broken off and gone and killed Joel, but sounds like they're pretty rotten. And then, of course, the episode sort of culminates with, the two of them showing up on their pretty horse and going like, oh, this doesn't look too bad. And then we see an army of WLF soldiers and in armored vehicles and all this stuff. And you realize not going to be quite as easy as they think it is. As a follow-up episode to last week was an all-time banger episode. We got the assault by the cordyceps. creatures on the town. We got Joel's death. Obviously, Ellie getting the tar beaten out of her. Did this satisfy both of you as far as a follow-up episode? As far as sorry, my dog's barking.
Yeah, I think it's a good bridge episode, right? It gets us that moment to mourn Joel and reset things with Ellie as being the main character going forward, telling the story from her perspective instead of from Joel's perspective.
Yeah.
I was a little surprised that they didn't actually show Joel. I was like, oh, okay. I think they killed him the exact way they did, a little bit different than the game, so that he's a little bit prettier when you inevitably have Ellie crying over his body. I'm like, oh wait, she didn't even see that. Like, she was in the hospital and they buried him, and she doesn't even know exactly where he is until they tell her. So that was a little bit of a surprise to me.
Yeah, I don't know. Somehow it felt like, obviously we see that sort of flashback scene to her first sort of realizing that he's gone and crying and screaming and stuff like that, and they have to sedate her and everything. So we know she's extremely sad, but then we do get this kind of more cold, calculating, again, much more sort of tactical version of Ellie in this, which I don't know. I mean, I expected her to have more of an emotional breakthrough, although, in the game, obviously it's a different circumstance, right? In the game version, there isn't this sort of 3 months thing. Yeah. There isn't the assault on the town. There isn't, some of these things are show creations. And it was interesting. Like, I think the show is very good at talking about like humanity and just sort of how we are us. That's the crux of her speech, right? Us is this town now. It's not her and Joel anymore. It's all of them together. Yeah. They are us. And she's basically saying, like, if we're us, how can we let this kind of thing stand? And in the end, obviously, she can't take it. But I thought that was really interesting that, she sort of hones in on the idea of, we can't let them do this to us. We're us. If we're not going to stand up for each other, what makes a community? If we don't avenge our deaths, if we don't stand up for ourselves, who are we? How does this work? I thought it was really interesting. Jaime, are you looking forward to several weeks of Seattle-based combat?
Keeping an eye out for, what do they loop in versus what is, bro, that's straight up Vancouver. Look, it's the train line right there kind of thing.
What I want to see is I'll know it's really Seattle when I see a coffee shop in the background of every shot, an abandoned coffee shop. Then I'll know we're there. That or a fish market. Again, another good one. Well, obviously, nowhere to go but down from last week. It was just such an episode, but I still think it was really strong and continues to be. Perfect television. Our cup runneth over between Andor and Last of Us. Jaime, have you a chance to catch up on Doctor Who? Or are you gonna sit this season out for now?
I'm sitting this one out, so you all are totally fine to cover your thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, not a lot there this week. It was a good episode. It was, pretty straightforward premise. It was interesting that it tied back into a previous New Who story from the David Tennant years. Mm-hmm. Although, I've got a pretty good memory. I didn't have strong memories about that. I remembered the concept vaguely when they showed a quick flashback to David Tennant. Mm-hmm. But the idea of this episode is that there is a monster that is hiding in plain sight, basically. And
behind people.
Yeah, directly behind people. If you go behind, you die. If you look the person in the eye, you get the hints and stuff like that. It was a good episode, but it wasn't like, it wasn't a home run, I don't think. But then,
it was a good episode. But I think like Keen mentioned on the on our Slack channel that he and his wife both, like, the Midnight episode was the name of the episode, season 4, episode 10. Mm-hmm. I just happen to know because I just watched a little bit of it before, because I don't think I ever saw that one initially on. The gist of that one is the Doctor by himself is traveling on a train 4 hours to go somewhere through this area called Midnight, and the train breaks down in the middle, and then there's a knock on the door, and it's this invisible creature who takes over one of the passengers on the train. And in the story, it's sort of a psychological drama, because in the story, it's kind of like the lifeboat kind of story. There's a movie called Lifeboat. There's a famous painting about being on a lifeboat. So these 6 characters or 7 characters are in this particular ship, and at one point the creature realizes the doctor is the smartest one in the room and starts to get. So as the people start to turn on each other, the creature starts to get them to turn on the doctor.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't watch it to the end, but that's the gist of why he thinks he's seen this particular villain or monster before.
Yeah.
And he's able to figure it out and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of pew pew and death and destruction in this episode. Well, they arrive and half the station is dead. But
yeah.
I think from that point of view, it was kind of an interesting thing, but it wasn't like the Screaming Angels or the.
It wasn't scary enough to be the scarier part of Who could actually do some pretty dark stuff from time to time.
Yeah.
This didn't touch that at all. Like at one point, his companion is at risk, and it's like, come on. I just never had that apprehension, and it's one of the challenges of Who when there's one companion. Kind of expect that 2 of them are going to make it out more or less scot-free, and whoever the guest stars of the week. And this week we got one of the guest stars was one of the characters from one of the actors from Slow Horses. You just kind of expect that these are the people who are going to be the cannon fodder. It's like Red Shirts, right? Like it's Doctor Who's version of Red Shirts. It's like, hey, here's who's the guest star this week. Oh, they're dead. It was a little bit disappointing on that side because it doesn't build as much tension, but. Those stories, and they've told Twilight Zone, lots of Black Mirror. We talk about the paranoia that takes over, the paranoia that turns into hatred, that turns into fear, that turns into hatred, and all that. Hate leads to suffering leads to murdering younglings or something. It was done well. It felt like fake stakes. There was nothing really like, oh no, these people we've just met, are gonna die. Like I don't really care. So
And the doctor's going to make it out.
Yeah. So, we need some real stakes, Doc. All right. Quick, spoiler-free review of Thunderbolts.
Yeah, Jonathan and I went to... we're in town today, in the same towns, and middle of nowhere, small theater.
We like our nowhere here, okay?
Okay, but they I'm just giving people perspective. It wasn't in 3D. It wasn't in IMAX. So it was basically the movie on its own merits. And we've seen a lot of build-up towards who are basically the Thunderbolts. We know Bucky from Winter Soldier and all the other things. We know Yelena from Black Widow and of course the Red Guardian from David Harbour's character. And we bring in some other people. It's interesting the way they set up the initial meet. Oh, the other thing is we get a lot of Valentina de Fontaine, right? Not Fontaine, de Fontaine.
Contessa.
Yeah. So we get a lot of her because she's sort of the
Julie Louis-Dreyfus is the bad,
the head of CIA, and they're trying to impeach her. And of course, these again, like I've been saying for the last couple of months now. Last 100 day, let's put it this way, that these congressional hearings and these threats of impeachment mean nothing anymore.
Yeah, the normality of even having a Red Hulk, the normality of
we should have had an
Washington in the movie Marvel Universe is so pales in comparison to reality. It's it does take you out for a second.
Yeah, so anytime there's like, oh, we're going to have congressional hearing or those pesky government inspections, like seriously?
Yeah,
right. They're expecting the wrong thing these days. So what the problem is, right? But anyway, so it's how these characters get together, how they end up in the room, in the kill box, as it were, and how they manage to reluctantly become
to work together.
And where the source of the name Thunderbolts is kind of funny, and you can see why. But in the trailers, they make it seem like more of a big deal that Elena says, we're not going to be called the Thunderbolts.
Yeah.
I don't think she actually said that in the movie.
I think because in the trailer, in the trailer she says we're not going to call ourselves that or something.
We're not the Thunderbolts.
We're not.
But we find out what the source of the Thunderbolts is, and it's Thunderbolts with an asterisk, which is what I said earlier.
And that is without getting into spoilers, the asterisk is very important But no, I think, again, without getting into the spoilers of it, Florence Pugh is the lead, and she's very captivating. I think not only is she a really good actress, and I've enjoyed her as an actress, but she can hold down a movie. She's a movie star.
Yeah.
And it's hard. That's a hard line to follow, to be able to be both considered a good actor and also a movie star.
Yeah.
But she leads this thing, and, it's an ensemble, the rest of it. You're right. Like, obviously, we got David Harbour, we got, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, we've got, and then
Wyatt Russell. We bring in, all these different sort of supporting characters from other parts, and they continue to play sort of supporting roles. But it really does hinge on whether or not she's going to be the emotional anchor of this, and whether she can carry the whole thing. And she does, and she really does, and she's really good at it. And this movie is a very emotional ride. That is something people need to go in expecting. Is there's some great action, but it really is a journey, an emotional journey for these sort of characters who we've come to know as all individuals, to have them come together and work together and realize that there's value in being more than just themselves. There is an emotional beating heart to this movie, and it really does kind of make it more satisfying. This is probably, I'm trying to think, probably the best Marvel movie since Guardians 3, I think is a pretty fair statement. For your mileage may vary. I don't think, all the Marvel movies are bad. I don't think they're all great. I think there's been a lot of good or fine. But I don't think there's really been the last movie where I came out going like, that was really good and I'm satisfied, was Guardians 3. And this hits that same spot of like, I enjoyed it for all of its aspects, not just one thing. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of stage setting. It is an important part of, I know sometimes people feel like, well, I can skip this one Marvel movie or I'll watch it down the road. This one definitely has a lot of glue to it. Yeah, I think you could skip Captain America.
They do reference it in this briefly, but really it kind of stands alone. If you've seen the trailer,
you've seen the movie, but it's not required watching, right? No. So, and like I said, anytime you've seen Valentina in the past, was not really required for watching this movie.
No,
right?
No. But that being said, it definitely there's a lot of glue here for what they're foreshadowing with the next few movies, teeing up the next Avengers movies and stuff like that. There's definitely some notes that they're dropping that you're going to pick up as you go through that stuff. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's a good watch. You're going to come out of it, happy that you spent the time with it, which, to be fair, not every movie does, and certainly not every Marvel movie does. So I think, I would give it an endorsement. Definitely think it's worth the time and the money. Then, hopefully it does well enough that, this was all worth it. But next up is Fantastic Four. So I think people have been more focused on that just because it is the first family of Marvel. They are the first modern Marvel, Silver Age comic. It is the sort of root of the Marvel universe. There's a lot of gravitas to doing it, and also bringing that property back from years in limbo. There's a lot of love for that one and a lot of attention on that one, but really, Thunderbolts is not to be slept on. It's good. It's really good.
No, definitely worth seeing.
Did we sell you, Jaime? Are you in?
Yeah, it sounds pretty good because we've been kind of needing. Even if we don't need a mega hit, which I guess if we had Movie Pass, we could bet on what the box office would be. We at least need a good getting back to the roots is what that sounds like.
And I think that is actually a really great way to put it, Jaime. It really does feel like this fits in with what people expect when you say, I'm going to go see a Marvel movie. It's charming, it's funny, it's got good performances, and it blows up real good.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
All right.
Okay,
we're there.
Are we at the watch list now? All right. Well, so, I'll go first. I've got a couple of things here. So for Christmas, I got the remastered Tomb Raider 1 to 3 remastered from Jonathan and family for Christmas. And this is remastering of the 1993 Tomb Raider 1, 2, and 3. And so I've been playing that for a while, and the thing is that surprisingly or not surprisingly, I played it in the order that I originally played the games, because I got Tomb Raider 2 first, because it came out on the Mac actually, which is how I started playing it, and then I got into playing it on the PlayStation. And I think I saw Lara Croft at a U2 concert, like in a flash, like a flash come up on the screen. That's how I discovered the character. So I've played all of the Tomb Raiders all the way.
You were like, why did that woman's breast square?
Yeah, that's another story altogether. But those they become a character on their own at some point, and then they kind of become normal in the end, right?
Yeah.
But so I played the first bunch of games, and it's interesting because it's remastered for the current PlayStation 4 and 5, right? So, and they have what they call modern controls. I was telling Xavier about this last night, that the one drawback is that there are certain moves that you can do with what they call the tank controls, which is the original forward, backward, two-handed kind of thing. Like you navigate with, because I guess the PlayStation had analog controllers. I can't remember.
It did initially. You had the thumb pad, and then you got the sticks.
D-pad, yeah. So, like there are certain things where you have to jump and grab a switch, which you can, with the modern controls on, you can jump and grab that switch 100 times and never land it. But so just go into the options, you switch to tank controls, hit the switch, and then you go back into options and switch it back to modern controls again, and off with the game you go. But there's a few moves in the game. Like I've been following people on Reddit, like they're waiting for patches for this game. I don't think a patch is going to do it. Just suck it up, switch the controller over, and away you go. Anyway, so that's it. So I played the first 3 games. I did play 2 and 3, and then I went back and played 1 again. And it was pretty. I mean, it was pretty good. It's been all rendered up, and it's funny because you can push the option key on the controller and see what it looked like in raster.
Oh.
And I think the other thing too, but the reason why it was easier to play the game and faster to play the game is obviously the processor's faster, right? And the controls are much more responsive. I think a lot of times you would die in the earlier game, on the earlier gameplay back in the 90s, because the speed wasn't there, or the reaction, or
the processor
lag,
processor lag.
And well, we had wired controllers initially.
Sure
right?
did.
Yeah.
Sure did.
So then once I finished those, I kind of got back into playing games, and I've been working, and so I take a bit of a break, and I set a time. I said I'd do the Pomodoro thing and set 30 minutes on my watch, and then I play for 30 minutes and repeat, or go back to doing what I'm doing, right? Just a way of mentally breaking away from work and doing this. So I ended up buying the 4, 5, and 6, which came out. They're only available online. There's no disc. Oh. Jonathan got me a disc initially, so I waited till it went on sale for like $10 off, then bought it, and I went through and I just played it. And 4 and 5 are similar mechanics to 1, 2, and 3, and they were all like, there's a history behind Tomb Raider. It's changed hands a number of times. Different companies took over with the code and things like that. And then they did this version called Angel of Darkness, which is Tomb Raider 6, which has been rated as the worst Tomb Raider of them all.
Well, because it was glitchy as hell.
It's still glitchy.
Yeah.
But there's a few times where I got stuck and I jumped on something and there was no way to get off of it. And, anyway, so I played that one, but it had all the way through all 6 games. I still had to do the switching between modern controls and tank controls to solve some of the problems. But it was okay. It was good. And then once I got that, and of course I don't know why. Maybe it's the timing or whatever. But all of the higher games, the newer games, are on sale right now. So I went back, and I think the last one is called Shadow of the Tomb Raider. And Shadow of the Tomb Raider is very similar to Red Dead Redemption in terms of like the world quality. There's a storyline you go through. There's a lot of side missions. There's a lot of resource management, sandboxy kind of stuff. And there's a lot of and I think for $11 Canadian you can download the game plus all the downloaded content. So I'm playing that again, right? So I've finished all 6 games. So if you were ever into Tomb Raider and you wanted the nostalgia of going back through and playing the things, yeah, I recommend it. It's a fun thing to play, right? So, and it's that, you're a single person, you're running through. I always call it these 3x3 foot cubes is what they feel like, right? Yeah. And you're kind of hopping from cube to cube. There are a few times where you have to do this jump and you have to sort of angle her in such a really weird angle, and the controllers your mileage will vary, but it is playable. And like I said, I managed to get through the 6 games in a couple of months, right? So
You still have to kill an inordinate amount of innocent animals.
Yeah,
and stuff.
the animal killing part is like, and there's no way around that. But you can. There are actually levels where
they didn't change them to like you throw a walkie-talkie at them or something. Or,
but they do have. Walkie-talkie. They do have a few. I mean, I remember running out of resources a lot when I was playing the games in the first one.
Yeah.
But I managed to get through the whole game, all 6 games, with like extra health and maybe it's just we're that much better at playing video games than we were back then.
30 years of game playing.
Yeah, and smarter. Smarter about saving games and stuff like that. You can save all the way through it. Like I do remember they had this crystal thing where you had to get to a crystal to sort of save. Yep. They don't do that anymore. It's now if you're nervous about a jump, you save it into a new slot, and away you go. So there's none of that. So I think that kind of speeds up the game too, and the frustration, right? Because some of the stuff is like really hard to do. Yeah, and so I've gone back to playing the latest version of it, which is it's actually written for PlayStation 5. It's a new company out of Montreal. There is a version that runs on iOS on the phone. There was a Lara Croft Go or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which is a fun game, and it's pretty quick. But the Shadow of the Tomb Raider is very extensive. Like it took me a while to play it the first time around, but I didn't. But now I know to constantly be looking for side missions and stuff like that, which I didn't know when I first played it. Right. Yeah. So I think I played it for a little bit, and then I gave up for like a year, and then went back to it, and then I discovered all the side stuff. But now going into it, knowing that there's side stuff to do. And there's all these different reward trophies you can get for certain things. Like you were saying with the animals, there are some levels. If you don't kill the crocodiles, there's a Crocodile Dundee kind of award where you can get through the level without killing the crocodiles. Yeah. Right, but it's hard. Yeah, because the crocodiles are out to get you.
I just remember the freaking Dobermans. The
Dobermans. And there's another one where there's monkeys. There's a level with monkeys. Yep. Mm-hmm. And there's one where if you don't kill the monkeys, you can get through the first part of the level with no harm, and you win a trophy for not killing the animals. But in the second one, you have to, because now they come and they start biting at your ankles, and there's rats and stuff like that.
I remember the rats too.
And then there's one level where there's these Buddhist monks at this temple.
You don't have to shoot the Buddhist monks?
No, you're not supposed to. They'll help you. Like there are bad guys running around like commandos who come after you and try and stop you. Mm. But you can let the Buddhist monks kill them.
Oh, okay. Sure, yeah.
But if you didn't know that, because as soon as you start killing the Buddhist monks, now they start coming after you. Mm. Right. So it's fun time.
There's morals in here.
Yeah, but like I said, you're right. There's an inordinate amount of killing dogs and monkeys and crocodiles and stuff that you can get through without killing them, but it's tough.
Yeah. Cool. Wow, that's good.
That's me.
Always good to hear a Christmas present works out.
Yeah. All
right, Jaime, what you got for us this week?
I'm not sure if I've shared the first video here. There's 2 videos from JTVFX YouTube channel. The first one is Wolf 359, The Massacre Part 1 from a year ago. It's kind of an interesting, fan film filling in things using actual Trek media and then using renders to fill in what the Battle of Wolf 359 was like in the TNG era. So it's about 10 minutes for part 1, which if I've selected, in the past, that's okay, because just about a month ago, I didn't realize that he has a teaser, a 4-minute teaser for part 2. I'm excited about that. It says to be continued in the full release later in 2025, but it's pretty nifty. Some of it's pretty raw. Some of it is pretty interesting choices that seem like they help fill in some of what was going on during this part of history in Trek.
Your bringing this up reminded me that I did actually have something I wanted to add to the watch list, which is I had to drive from here to Ontario and Ontario back to here over the course of a week, and wanted to put on an audiobook. So I put on the audiobook version of Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, who famously did The Martian. And it is a space traveling storyline where the basic premise is that there's a catastrophe that's going to impact Earth. They have to send a mission into space. And so that's sort of where it goes. But Wolf 359 is actually a real star. And it gets mentioned in there at one point. They're talking about the most proximate stars. And like The Martian, it's a very scientifically written book. It's like, it helps if you understand science. It definitely helps if you understand chemistry. It helps if you understand astronomy. There's a lot of
relativity
and relativity and biology. Like he doesn't write down the science in his books. As a matter of fact, he writes it up. And some people, your mileage may vary, but I actually really enjoy when he's not pulling punches on science in the books. And yeah, I thought it was actually a really, really, really good, a really good story. I enjoyed it. I wasn't really sure what to expect. I read his previous 2 books, The Martian and Artemis, and I enjoyed them both. They're different, those first 2. This one felt more, it was almost a combination of the first 2.
Yeah.
And it definitely felt more like The Martian in that sort of this sole narrator and a fairly contained amount of people and a lot of sort of soliloquizing, internal monologue kind of stuff of somebody who's in a situation that's really messed up. And it was really, it was really, really interesting read. I enjoyed it a lot. I think I read that this is going to be a movie that's coming out next year. Ryan Gosling is going to play the lead character of Raylan. Grace. Yeah, Grace. Yeah, Grace. His last name's Grace. So I'll be really curious to see how they do it. The story is interesting in that it's told across a couple of different timelines. He's telling some things as sort of flashbacks to...
he doesn't remember when he first wakes up.
Well, that's it. So it'll be interesting to see if that's the narrative style that they use for the movie about, do they tell it in a linear narrative? Do they tell it in a sort of back and forth narrative? I'm really curious, having enjoyed the book and the way that story unfolds over the course of the book. I'm curious to see how they turn that into a film. I almost felt, as I was listening to this, quite a long audiobook. I think it's close to 20 hours. I found myself thinking, actually, this would have really made a great, Apple TV series or something where you could kind of get some meat out of it as opposed to a 2-hour or 2.5-hour movie. And I honestly, I found myself thinking the same thing about The Martian. The Martian is a terrifically made adaptation of a really good book, but you could kind of do a much longer version of it if you wanted to tell like a 6-episode, Netflix series or Apple TV series about that.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see what ends up on the cutting room floor. What do they decide to cut out of the backstory? What do they decide to change to try and get it down to that time limit? But anyway, you sliced it. I thought it was really good, and I recommend the audiobook version. I actually own the physical version, but I haven't had a chance to actually crack it. So I was like, great, I'm just going to do it this way. So yeah.
I'm also listening to it right now too. Carol and I were listening to it in the car a little bit on the way here, and we ran into an issue where I had to stop it for a while. And she's like, I wanted to find out what happened to Rocky.
Yeah, some really good. And again, he's a good writer, Andy Weir, in that he balances the intensity with the humor, with the science. Like and he got a good ear for dialogue. It feels very natural. He's a really good writer, and I could see not everybody would love the deep science of it all, but he could still tell a pretty good yarn. So looking forward to the movie version, and definitely looking forward to whatever Andy decides to do next.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's it for another week. So, hey, Jonathan, people would get in touch with you wherever they find you.
Oh, I'd start by looking on Blue Sky or Instagram. I'm at GPK News, or you can look up youtube.com/@JPK.
All right. How many people will get in touch with you wherever they find you?
I'm on Instagram as @DevWithTheHair.
Of course you are. My name is Tim Mitra, TIMMITRA. It's where you'll find me on most of the things: Blue Sky, Mastodon, Substack, Reddit, anything that's got a handle, that's my handle. Expedia, whatever. Okay, well, so until next time, we'll see you in the future. Bye.
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 You've been listening to the Spotcast Podcast. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spotcast website at spotcast.com. If you have feedback or questions, you can get in touch with us on the website. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/spotcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spotcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
We made it!
I can't hear you, Jaime, so...
I'll do an interpretive dance for whatever Jaime says.
Relay my thoughts.
How about them Leafs?
Yeah. Yes, the Leafs actually closed out a playoff series tonight, Jaime. This is cause for celebration. They had a 3-0 series lead and went to 6 games.
Yeah, they almost snatched defeat from the jaws of victory, which is what they tend to do.
Wait, so did they win today 4-2 and win the series 4-2? Because that was a little confusing when I googled
exactly that. They won the game 4-2. They won the series 4-2, and they staved off another year of humiliation for the Toronto fans for the short term. Anyways, they're playing the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers in the next round. So you're definitely gonna not necessarily want to put a lot of if you are one of those traditional bettors as opposed to us movie bettors, you're probably not going to want to throw a lot of money down on the Leafs for the next round. But always good to win, and they're still undefeated against the Ottawa Senators in the playoffs. They have never lost a playoff series to the Ottawa Senators, which, as our provincial quote-unquote rivals, nice. It's nice. It's very satisfying. I don't know what the equivalent would be. I'm trying to think of what the American equivalent to Ontario, Battle of Ontario. Ottawa is like not a very... they think they're very important, but they're really not when compared to Toronto. And I don't know what the American equivalent to that is. If this is like, Dallas to San Antonio or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I got to think on that one a bit. It's a little complicated because, Ottawa is the capital.
It is. And that's frankly the only reason that they probably have a hockey team. It's a relatively small town. It's one of the smallest markets in the entire hockey league and one of the smallest professional sports markets in North America. So, I'm trying to think of like what's the smallest the smallest potatoes kind of organization. This is the Cleveland Browns. I don't know. Like what's the sort of we really think we're something, but we're really not.
It gets weird because it's not a perfect fit for where you're going, but I think of the Green Bay Packers in that if you didn't have the history there, if they ever have an owner that just steals the team in the middle of the night, like they're never going to get a team back ever. They're so tiny. There's just no way outside of weird historical quirk of how the NFL was originally constructed and a lot of success that kept love for the team. There's just zero chance that Green Bay ever gets a team. As far as I know, they don't have any team. I'm not even sure if they have minor league teams. I have to double check.
Well, I mean, it's essentially Wisconsin / Milwaukee / all of that region, right? Like that they kind of coalesced around this little tiny town, even though by any measure it's just not a really important other than that one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, Ottawa is similar in the way that they do have they have over the course of their existence had minor league baseball. They've had other minor league sports, but all things being equal, it's the Senators are kind of their claim to fame as far as the city goes. So it's always nice when you put them back where they belong, and that's out. Jaime's very happy for us.
Yay!
Yeah, that's good.
We're happy about the Seattle PW.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was the big news this week, Jaime. You're getting a professional women's hockey league team.
Oh, I did not see that in the news. Do they have a team name? Like, man, the local news. Wait, how long ago was this announced?
A couple days ago.
A couple days ago. Okay, yeah, I guess I didn't follow the local news during that time. That tracks.
So right now, they haven't given them a sort of team name. They're calling them PWHL Seattle. It's their working name. And they're coming into the league starting this fall. So
they can't be called this stuff.
Yeah. Oh no. Oh, darn it.
Let's see. Yeah. So you got Boston Fleet, Minnesota Frost, Montreal Victoire, I guess.
Victoire, yeah.
Siren, this for New York, Ottawa Charge, Toronto Scepters, and you got Seattle and Vancouver.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
Interesting that they decided to go with the Pacific Northwest Cascades rivalry for the expansion teams instead of choosing like man, I don't know what their strategy is here. Like,
well, I mean,
Miami and say just have it in an ice arena, indoor ice arena.
It's a good choice to have two teams come in that same time zone and to have a natural rivalry to start, because if you just had one of those and then the next nearest team was, hours and hours of plane flight away, it kind of diminishes those moments. I'm glad when they make these kinds of decisions. They're going to start at the same time, which means they're going to be cousins. They're already two cities that have a little bit of a rivalry to them. And
Calgary and
no,
but mostly just Boston.
Minnesota, Boston, New York. How many just listed them? Minnesota, Boston, New York, Ottawa, Toronto, and Montreal. There's only 6 teams to start. These will be the 7th and 8th teams. It is a bit of a bold move to go all the way out to the Western time zone, and to that is going to be more money. It's going to mean the league needs to make more money to have the travel and all that other stuff. But it also gives them a real nice toehold out there. And I will say, I've sat and watched numerous Toronto Scepters games, and the quality of hockey is pretty good. I still think that it's a shame that they don't let women play full contact. I think that they're perfectly capable of playing full contact hockey. That's not to say it's not a very physical game, because it certainly is. There's just no body checking. But the quality of the hockey is quite high, and the quality of women's hockey overall worldwide is probably the highest point that it's ever been. There are some really, really excellent female hockey players out there from all over the world, not just Canada and the United States, the way it's traditionally been. So I think having these teams, having built up more of a base of the quality of these teams, having those then go back to national teams and go back to, the development of women's hockey, just like we've seen over the last 25 years with the WNBA, the quality starts to raise all boats, right? So, you start to see better college teams, better funding, better professional teams, and more interest. I think there's a nice ascendance for women's sports right now. And it's nice that hockey is part of that, not just, just basketball. I saw a story recently that there is going to be women's soccer is obviously growing across North America. I saw that there's going to be a women's baseball league starting next year as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that is received and what the quality of play is like.
Is that the Women's Pro Baseball League?
I think so. I read about it when they announced that it was coming, but I did not get all the details. So, yeah. But yeah,
might not get a team. If I'm looking at this, your top cities: Boston, Los Angeles, Toronto, Oakland, Philly, New York City above the line. And then below the line, 7, 8, 9, 10 are Chicago, Atlanta, San Francisco, and San Diego. Starts in 2026. 6 franchises. Wait, hold on. 6 franchises. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how it, how it is. I must admit, I don't think I've ever seen a women's baseball. I've seen women's softball. I don't think I've ever seen a women's baseball game. Women's softball can be intensely competitive. Some of the high caliber, especially U.S. Women's College and Olympics, the competitive level is very high and very interesting. So it's good to see how this develops. I did see a story this week, which I'm disappointed when they continually do this, but there was the WNBA draft was held, and they were talking about what the entry-level contracts are for WNBA players versus what the entry-level contracts are for NBA players. And they were saying that, Paige Buchers is going to make $87,000 for her entire first season in the WNBA, and that is one game's salary for the projected number 1 pick in the NBA draft this year. And what a discrepancy and a disparity. And they of course never acknowledge the fact that this is pure economics. The NBA has been around for 70 years and has, grown to the point where, it has a popularity that merits, high attendance, TV contracts, all these different things that lead to higher salaries. I truly hope that women's sports become equal over the course of time, but to compare those things just really feels like apples and oranges, and it feels like it's just reductive. Like, these women get to play professional sports and make a living at it. a great start. And then, yes, let's make them stars. Let's make the quality of the sport really high, and let's drive people to come to the stadiums and get them TV contracts and get them bigger salaries. But it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing because it's ostensibly looked at as like an equal pay for equal work, and I don't think that societal bit at large as a problem really applies here. It's an entertainment product, so you're in a competitive product. You're really looking more for, you know, what's the value here.
Yeah,
and I think that's one thing that for the, you know, women's soccer team, the national soccer team is what I'm talking about, versus the men's. This disparity is really problematic because every time that the World Cup or Olympics comes up, I'm like, all right, man, just try to make it out of the round robin round. And for the women, I'm like, you better win gold or you've shamed your country. It's like, you don't win gold, I expect you to win gold. The other guys is like, get your act together. And the pay disparity is still there. It's like, well, that's dumb. People should really be watching more because, like, you're going to see winners when you see the U.S. women's national team play. You're going to see, bless their hearts, they try really hard for the men's national team. You know?
Yeah, no, it's fair. I mean, the same is true of basketball, right? The American men's and women's teams go into every major competition with an expectation of gold, and it's earned. They are, you know, at the highest level. But, you know, it's funny how there is these sort of double standards of, you know, for some of these women, they are still collegiate players, or they're, you know, NBA players or WNBA players who may not be making massive salaries yet or whatever. And, you know, out come the NBA stars, you know, as they roll up in their, you know, their limousines for their games and stuff, right?
Yeah, I think the private sector, when it comes to sponsorships and endorsements, I think that's really have to make it up. So, Caitlin Clark is getting like peanuts, you know, from the league herself, the team itself, for salary, but all the money really should be made from the endorsements and everything. Mm-hmm. It's not exactly the same because you can be an NBA star and make bank on both.
Yeah,
but I think, you know, building up the hype around that will cause the salaries to go up, I think, because it will be like, hey, I'm not going to play for you. Why not? It's like, because you're paying me nothing and this team's going to pay me something. That's how it works.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully, you know, as the quality of the infrastructure grows at younger levels for girls to play and, you know, into academic levels and into the pros, you're going to see more Caitlin Clarks. You're going to see more of these special talents who are going to, you know, again, you know, every generation of any sport that is trying to grow needs to have these milestone players who are like, hey, I'm going to make a point to watch this person because they're awesome. You know, look at what Wayne Gretzky did for hockey in the United States. Look at, you know, some of these players who have broken out, Jordan, LeBron in basketball, you know, Lionel Messi in soccer, these people who you're like, I'm going to pay to see this person. You know, Caitlin Clark at the women's game right now is one of those people who is already, you know, achieving great things and has so much potential as a young person, you know, hopefully continues to raise the levels. And, you know, if you watch the game and you enjoy the game, maybe you watch another game, or maybe you watch a different team play. And, you know, hopefully that means that there's more eyeballs on it. That means that the sports channels all fight over the rights for it. That means they get more money into the league. It means they get more opportunities to train. It means more young women, you know, and girls want to aspire to being in the sport, so that drives more of a foundation for it. I mean, that's half the reason why the U.S. women's soccer team is so good, is because there's so many young girls and women who start playing soccer, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, I think it's good. I think it's really good to see these leagues growing, and you know, again, I'm happy to give my support to the PWHL and the WNBA and watch them all grow. And again, I don't think it has to be one at the expense of the other. I can enjoy the NBA and still enjoy the WNBA, and it doesn't have to be, you know, obviously, yes, I want these women to be able to make a good living doing what they're doing, but hopefully we'll get there eventually. All right, should we call it a night?
Already.
Yes. Oh, yes. You have the long commute all the way down through the middle of nowhere. All right, Jaime. Good chatting with you. We'll do it again next week. 4 more episodes a week. Nothing worse than a grind of amazing television.
Exactly.
All right. Bye.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Live on DAZN Worldwide.
Saudi Arabia.
Saturday, May 3rd, 7 p.m. Eastern. Canelo versus Skull. The King stakes his legacy once more for the undisputed crowd. Standing in his way is Warrior Skull, undefeated and poised to decimate the division on a knockout weekend of boxing.
Let's make history.
Get Canelo vs. Skull, Saturday, May 3rd, 7 p.m. Eastern, live exclusively on DAZN. Buy now at DAZN.com.
Seeking the truth never gets old. Introducing June's Journey, the free-to-play mobile game that will immerse you in a thrilling murder mystery. Join June Parker as she uncovers hidden objects and clues to solve her sister's death in a beautifully illustrated world set in the Roaring '20s. With new chapters added every week, the excitement never ends. Download June's Journey now on your Android or iOS device, or play on PC through Facebook Games.